Hi, very good evening to everyone. This side Ankit Mishra, and I hope I'm audible to everyone. आप सभी को मेरी आवाज आ रही है? Candidates, on today onwards, I'm going to taking all of your session regarding ML, data science, machine learning, AI, deep learning, and all. Right. So before I just continue, I really want you guys to briefly introduce yourself, whatever like we have covered so far, and on today onwards, अभी हम इसी को continue करेंगे, right? So I hope I'm audible to everyone, right? Adarsh, Rohit, Nisarg. Anyone kindly confirm me once again? Guys, am I audible? Can anyone confirm me? Okay, okay, got it. So, candidate, shall I just continue or like would you want to say something like अभी तक का ओवरऑल जो ट्रेनिंग में आपका क्या क्या कवर अप हो गया है लाइक द टॉपिक्स द करिकुलम पार्ट जो भी हमारा है रिलेटेड टू मशीन लर्निंग एआई एंड ऑल एनीवन वांट्स टू से समथिंग क्या क्या अभी तक आपका कवर अप हो गया बिकॉज ऑन टुडे ऑनवर्ड्स आई एम गोइंग टू कंटिन्यू एंड सो आई जस्ट वांट कि जो जो चीजें कवर अप हो चुकी हैं लेट जस्ट डिस्कस द सेम थिंग एंड अभी हमें बहुत कुछ सीखना है राइट एंड बिलीव मी जो अपकमिंग सेशंस होंगे दे आर गोइंग टू बी वेरी लाइक अमेजिंग एंड उसमें आप मल्टीपल प्रोजेक्ट्स भी बनाएंगे एंड दे आर ऑल related to data science and all. Okay. So before I just continue, let me introduce myself. Myself, Ankit Mishra. Currently, I'm working as a data scientist, right? And I got like somehow connected with multiple organizations to train you guys so that you can understand the what the things are going in the market में जो अभी current सारी चीजें चल रही related to AI ML deep learning and all, right? So this is going to be like very amazing so that you can understand the current market requirements, right? Market में AI से related क्या चीजें हैं, ML से related and so on, right? So what I am told कि there are multiple things that already been covered, which is like Python आप लोग का हो चुका है, SQL part आप लोगों ने already cover up कर लिया है, and machine learning part आपका just start हुआ था, right? So let me just start. Anyone wants to say something? Taruna or Nisarg, let me just check कितने लोग connected हैं. Hmm. Anas, Priti, Priya, Rohit. Okay. Anyone can you just confirm कि आप लोग का it's not like just one way of conversation. आप लोग का mic allowed है ना? Just let me know. या is it like कि आप लोग just chat में ही discuss कर सकते हैं? Aska, can you just confirm me this once again? Like are the participants are
Yes,
allowed to like communicate? Hello.
yes, they are allowed to speak for themselves. Hello.
Okay. Yes, yes. Got it. So anyone wants to say something like अभी तक क्या क्या cover up हो चुका है so that I can continue. ऐसा ना हो कि just it's like a pre-recorded class. अगर आप लोग ही चुपचाप बैठे रहोगे तो I don't think there is like so much of कुछ इसका यूज बनता है, right? विभा लक्ष्मी, तरुणा, तिलक, स्फूर्ति, candidates are you there? Okay. Okay, no issue. Take your time. ठीक है. Let me just start with the today's topic. Once you feel comfortable, आप लोग को कुछ किसी को कुछ बात करना हो, then you can probably let me know, right? Either you can drop your message on message box, आपका chat में आप लोग बता सकते हैं, और we can directly connect over the call as well, right? Okay. So as as far अभी तक जो है हमने already ML start कर दिया था, right? And we know that you are already good to go with Python के concept, pandas के concept, numpy, matplotlib, c1 and so on, right? So, can I just ask one thing, like why there is a requirement of this machine learning? Why we want to train machine? Can anyone wants to say something? We want to train machine because we want to mimic the human intelligence. The way human thinks, we also want to perform the same level of intelligence. We want to achieve the same level of intelligence with the help of machine. And how to achieve that level of intelligence? That is called machine learning. And it's very important to train our machine so that machine can understand those patterns. And based on those patterns, machine can think. Machine can predict the next future value. Machine can classify what is going to be in the near term future, right? Whether it is related to the stock market price prediction, yeah, company sales predictions, revenue predictions, profit prediction, diagnosis predictions, disease prediction. All these are stuff of artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? And if you are comfortable with this field, the one thing that you need to understand, it's all about data. The more you give that good data, the more convenient model it will be. आप before we just deep dive into this field, we know that Google, once the ChatGPT has launched into the market, जब ChatGPT आया था since November 2022 onwards, right? Google has also introduced the AI LLM models, right? And you know that the name of that model is LLM model is a Google tool name is Google Bard. But the problem that Google Bard was facing, they are like very irrelevant amount of data because that Google Bard was particularly trained on like Pinterest, Reddit, and some online platform source of data where the public can share their opinions as well. And because of this irrelevant source of data, the Bard was not able to give you that level of intelligence. Someone asked like, "I'm not feeling well today. What to do now?" So Google Bard has said, "Go and suicide," right? So I can just simply say one thing: if we are going to get into this field, artificial intelligence or like a machine learning field, we need to understand data is very important. Whether it is like related to structured data, unstructured data, आप लोगों ने ये सारी चीजें अभी पढ़ी होगी, right? All these are like quite stuff related to this AI and ML field, right? So it's very important to give a good amount of data so that model can predict those values based on the particular overall training, right? And how to achieve that level of intelligence, it's a completely field of study. And with the help of that machine learning, we are able to train that machine, we'll build a models, and that models are able to predict the values. That value is completely based on the probabilistic concept, right? But it is somehow relevant so that feature can be like foreseen in upcoming जो भी scenarios है हमारे based on that, right? Okay, so as far we know that you have already learned about so far what is machine learning and so on, so that, right? So let me just write introduction to AI and ML. In this, you have already completed what is linear regression, right? Why it is required. Can anyone let me know what do you understand by like linear regression? Anyone, guys? See, I just want a two-way of communication. It's not like just a pre-recorded of class. If you just want the recordings as well, I have multiple recordings, right? You can simply go through it. But the thing, because why we are into a live classes so that we can understand the things, you can share your doubt on a lifetime, right? So linear regression is required. Once you understand these concepts, a mathematical concept, it's very important to understand the mathematical portion of A and ML as well, right? So you have already covered this introduction part, linear regression, how to evaluate a model as well. आप लोगों ने सारी चीजें already cover up कर रखी है. Evaluation of model, right? All these multiple matrices are key terms, whether it is like mean squared error, mean absolute error, root mean squared error, adjusted R score, R2 score, all these the key terms or like the matrix term that has already been completed, right? So since we deep dive into the next part, right? Let me just recap the previous covered part, whatever you guys have completed, right? So we know that machine learning is all about training a machine based on the past data. But before we just get into this machine learning, we need to understand whether the data is relevant or not. It's not like कि कोई भी data उठाओ, just pick any data and create a model, right? See, there is a difference between working with artificial intelligence or like machine intelligence. Okay, you cannot like build any model irrespective of any data. You need to find out those insights, those data mining concepts which are unable to like अभी तक वो सारी चीजें ना दिखी हो, ठीक है? So machine learning में first of all you need to understand the quality of data, then probably based on that you can build your own model, right? Okay, so what I'll do, uh, because this is a first class, I just want a recap. Okay, so based on that, let's just create a simple model so that you can definitely understand what was the concept अभी तक हमने क्या क्या पढ़ा. Okay, so step one, let's just अभी जो है last time ही Indian government has introduced their financial budgets, right? And we know that budgets are completely related to their GDP portion and so on, right? So we have a data, and I'll give you the task as well. We have a data of Canada yearly GDPs, right? And we have Indian data, Indian GDP data in context of year as well, right? I'll give you that data. So what I'll do, I need to create a model. You guys have to follow the same step. अगर आप साथ साथ perform करना चाह रहे हैं तो. So the concept is, the objective is, we want to build a machine learning model, ML Canada GDP prediction, okay, using linear regression. Why we are using linear regression? Because we know that the data is like a quantitative in nature. If the data is quantitative in nature, whether it is like आपका continuous data or a discrete data, I think you guys are very familiar with all these words, right? So if the data is continuous in nature, in short, like integer data है या float data है, so you will use the regression kind of problem. If the problem is related to like the classification part one, जहाँ पर हमारा qualitative data हो सकता है, like disease classification, flower classification, image classification, all these are part of a classification problem. It could be binary classification और a multi-class classification, जहाँ पर आप दो class भी classify कर सकते हैं and even multi-class classification as well. But why we are using this linear regression? Because we have to predict a numerical output, and that numerical output is continuous in nature or can be discrete in nature, right? So we have our objective, ML Canada GDP price prediction using linear regression, right? So what you can do, you can start with the step one. Guys, am I audible now? Asya, इन सबको आवाज आ रही है मेरी? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one just spoke, right? So the thing is, I just want, देखिए अभी तक का आपका क्या करिकुलम रहा, I don't know. Your the previous trainers have already shared me कि अभी तक सारी चीजें क्या क्या complete हो गई, right? मेरा थोड़ा अलग तरीका है, right? I just want a two way of communication so that you guys can feel comfortable, and it's not like a pre-recorded classes, right? This has to be a live interaction one, so that you can also share your doubts. You can ask me the things, and because I am into this field more than 7+ years, so I have seen the changes, like overall जो trend अभी आया है before AI and after AI era, right? So you can ask me the question. It's not related to the machine learning. You can ask me the question related to generative AI, LLMs, large language models, transfer learnings. You can ask me about the agentic AI. Multiple things we can cover up, right? And the curriculum has designed in a way so that you can understand the multiple things, so that you can feel comfortable to get into the upcoming opportunities, right? That is the reason you guys can ask me the questions, right? Okay, I think it's good to go, right? Candidates, perfect. Okay, so the step one is all about whenever you are like walking in this ML field, you have to break down all your codes in a step way manner, right? So let me just start. The first step, that is import all your modules. You can follow the same steps if you are performing parallelly, right? Import all important modules. Can anyone let me know what are the different modules required to work in this machine learning? The first module that you are already comfortable with is pandas module, right? I think you have already covered this module. Can it? Is it? Import pandas as PD, right? And let me just give you one suggestion, right? Because we are working in a Google Colab, right? And you are already familiar with this Google Colab. Google provides the like AI tool, Google Gemini integration, and that allows you to auto complete your code. What I'll suggest, you can toggle this, but my personal suggestion is not right now, because once you toggle this, आप अगर इसे ऑन कर लेंगे गूगल एआई असिस्टेंट, this will completely cover up all your codes, and you are going to like कि यार ये तो सारा अपने आप लिख रहा है, and even I'm not writing a single code as well, right? So I'll suggest right now उसे आप switch off कर लो, and once you are good to go with this all these code concepts, then you can probably use AI, right? The use of AI is like it makes your work easy. It's not like कि आपके काम को completely eliminate कर दे, right? So import pandas as PD, import numpy as NP, import, you guys can perform parallelly, right? आप लोग भी साथ साथ कर सकते हैं. Import matplotlib, import cbon. Is any module like जो आप लोगों ने cover up नहीं किया हुआ? Anyone? Candidates? Class? Import c1 or SNS. And if you want to work this machine learning, so you have to import a scikit-learn module. And how to import this from sklearn, because we are dealing with like the linear regression, and we know that key scikit-learn is a module built in आपका C and C++ प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज. जितने भी पाइथन के आपके मॉड्यूल्स हैं ना, वो बहुत फास्ट है. If someone is telling that Python is very slow programming language, yes, it can be. But why it is fast? Because all modules are built using C and C++ libraries, right? इसलिए Python fast हो जाता है. Even Python itself written in C language. So from sklearn dot linear model, inside this linear model, because we are working and we are just covering up a recap layer how to implement the linear regression, right? So from sklearn linear model, import linear regression, and we know that if we are creating a model, we need to understand ki how our models are performing, whether it is like just a model for like formality kind of model or it's working very well. उसको evaluate करने के लिए we need to call some evaluation metrics. It's like a stages interviews or like a test scenarios जहाँ पर हम model check out करते हैं whether the model performing in a very good manner or not. Not like कि just model बना दिए. Model should be आपका good enough to predict the best possible values. It's not like कि just बन गया model. So from sklearn.linear model, we have imported this linear regression. Now the second thing, we need to understand कि model को evaluate कैसे करें. So we have another sub modules inside this sklearn. sklearn matrices. You can simply call out different like level of matrices, and we know that ये सब आप लोगों ने पढ़ा हुआ. Anyone, can you please confirm me once again कि क्या ये already covered है MSc, MAE and RMSE? Your previous trainer has told कि ये सारी चीजें covered up थी हमारी, and that is the reason I am just giving it, right? Okay, Sneha, very good to go, right? So, Sneha, like, what do you understand by this MSc, MAE, and RMSE? Can you, anyone can share me the glimpse, like, what is the use of this MAE and RMSE? Why it is required? It's like the kind of evaluation process. We just want to check the differences between the actual predicted value and the actual, like the predicted value and the actual value. दोनों में क्या differences है, right? So inside this matrices, either we can build our own like custom functions with the help of mathematical formulas, or sklearn gives you already important functions, so you can use the same as well. So let me just import mean squared error. Second is mean absolute error, and third you can either you can use the root mean squared error as well, और आप इसका भी डायरेक्ट स्क्वायर रूट निकाल सकते हैं, right? Not root squared error, root mean squared error, right? This one, perfect. Now you know that key inside this sklearn we need to break down our data in a training and testing part. So you can just call from sklearn dot model selection, and inside this model selection you'll get to work with this train test split. What is the use of this train test split? We can divide our ML data like the structured or any unstructured data. Okay, so before I just continue with like structured and unstructured data, can anyone let me know what are the major differences between structured and unstructured data? Sneha and rest candidates. See, इसके मीनिंग पे मत जाना, इसके नेम पे मत जाना. It's like structured data stored in a structured format and unstructured data are like stored in unstructured format. No, this is not a complete definition. This can be the partial one, but ये it's not a completed one, right? Tilak, Vaishnavi, Tejaswani, Sneha, Shreyas, guys, let me know the difference between structured and unstructured data. The structured data are like which is stored in a tabular format, right? The data doesn't represent key, it should be the clean one. If the data is structured data, it is like it just stored in a database or like a tabular format data. But when it is comes to unstructured data are like a file format data. ये जितना भी आप फोल्डर देखते हैं ना, all these folder are like unstructured data. Unstructured data is like image data हो गया, audio data हो गया, video data हो गया. Unstructured way, unstructured not organized way. No, see, that is the reason ना, मैं वही आपको कह रहा हूँ कि structured is not like कि just आपका वो structured format में. Structure represent it's in a tabular format. A tabular format represents that data can be malfunctions as well. Data can have multiple anomalies. Data can have multiple missing values. If the data, even if the data is in structured format, right? But structure represent, yeah, very good, Priya, right? Structure has a fixed schema, and that fixed schema is called a tabular kind of a structure, right? And unstructured is like, see, the thing is, we need to understand multiple things in a very simpler way. It's not like we no need to fall inside a trap of definition. हमें definition में नहीं फंसना. We just need to understand the practical implications, right? कि unstructured data is like जो हमारा file format data होता है. It's like image data हो गया, audio data हो गया, video data हो गया, right? Voice sampling data हो गया, facial recognition का जो भी हमारा data है, all these are data which is stored in a file format. It's a unstructured data, right? And deep learning is further required to work on those data sets. And structured data is like which is stored in a tabular format that has a fixed schema, right? If we are working in the structured data or with the structured data, then we probably use machine learning. Machine learnings are good enough to work on a structured data because we have a fixed dimension. हमारे पास फीचर्स फिक्स होते हैं, लाइक 10 फीचर्स हो गए, 20 फीचर्स हो गए. बट व्हेन इट इज कम्स टू अनस्ट्रक्चर्ड डेटा, वी हैव मल्टीपल फीचर्स, एंड दैट इज द रीजन मशीन लर्निंग वहां काम नहीं कर पाता. And that's why it's required to work with the deep learning. A deep learning is a further extension of machine learning. I think you are already familiar with this diagram, right? Guys, आप लोगों ने ये diagram देखा होगा, right? AI, ML, that Venn diagram, right? AI, ML, deep learning, and all, right? And that the Venn diagram itself represents the deep learning is a further extension of machine learning, where you just not only work on the deep part. It's like a dense neural network जहाँ पर आप you just want to mimic a human intelligence. Here we are building multiple neural network inside deep learning. And why we are building multiple neural networks? Because our data features can be n numbers of features, right? And that n number of features can be easily handled by the deep learning irrespective of any sort of data. Machine learning is not able to particularly articulate the same thing. Machine learning नहीं कर पाता है, right? So if we have unstructured data, deep learning can be preferred. If we have a structured data, machine learning can be used. But if we have a big amount of data, big data, right, we can probably use deep learning, machine learning, right? And whatever we are learning, it's like all we are using the local host approach, right? But right now in the market, it's very important to understand the cloud concept as well. ये जितना भी हम सीखेंगे ना, we need to understand कि how to implement all these using the AWS, Azure services, right? And GCP services, right? It's not like कि आप कंपनी में जाएंगे और गूगल कोलैब ओपन कर देंगे. You need to understand because the company data is stored in a cloud format. क्लाउड में ही आप मॉडल बिल्ड करेंगे. इट्स नॉट अलाउड टू यूज द गूगल कोलैब. जुपिटर नोटबुक होगा, बट इट्स नॉट जस्ट सिंपली इन अ गूगल कोलैब फॉर्मेट. यू विल यूज द सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स AWS, Azure, and GCP, right? So we have divided our data into a training and testing part, right? Okay. Now you can use the operating system, you can use the warnings. There is any like feature warnings, whether it is a version mismatch, so you can call this, right? And whenever you are calling this warnings, inside this warning we have a method which is called filter warning, and we can suppress our warnings, right? So you can ignore this. Once it is loaded successfully, you can print this message: uh, all module loaded. SUCC is well as FULLY. All module loaded successfully, right? You can. Okay, let me just correct this spelling. IGNORE ignored. Perfect. Okay. Now the second step is we need to import our data, right? Okay, we have different sources. We can import our data. We can use the Kaggle. We can use the web scraping approach, and I think आपके curriculum में web scraping भी है. Okay, right now we have a data uploaded on our data set Google Drive, so you can call the same data set. So the step two is load data set. How to load the data set? Let me just share this data set, right? First, okay, see, because the data set inside in a like Google Drive, so Google Colab allows you to connect your Google Colab Jupyter ID with the Google Drive, and that concept is called Google Mount. You can do one thing. यहाँ पर ना आपको Google Mount का ऑप्शन दिखता है. You can directly call out all your Google mounted data inside a Google Colab. Now just understand this concept. It gives you the automation kind of approach where anything that can be uploaded inside a Google Drive, any sort of data, it can be directly communicated with the Google Colab because both are connected, right? So we have this data set. Let me make it publicly available so that you guys can also use this. So what I'll do, file पे जाएंगे, share पे, and just let me publish this to web, right? You can use the documentation format, entire document, and let me just make this public. Okay, now what I can do, I can just simply copy this URL because इसी पे मेरा data रखा हुआ है. You guys can also use this URL, right? Okay, now just go to this Google Colab and simply write out this URL is equals to inside a triple quotes and paste your Google URL here, right? See, once you click on this Google URL, your file get downloaded automatically, and that represent key you have a correct URL. Let me just click on that. If I click on that, my file should be downloaded automatically. Yes, it's downloading, right? And that represent yes, I have a correct URL. Now what to do? Because we know that we can directly fetch out data using the URL if the data set final extension is good or like the correct one. And right now it's in CSV format. So what we can do, we can simply use the pandas approach pd.read underscore CSV, right? And we can simply pass out the URL, right? And once if the URL is good, this will automatically read out the data. And just imagine, right? The data is stored in a Google Drive or like a Google Sheet. If I change the data set here, it get automatically filtered inside a Google Colab, right? So you can store this data inside a data frame, or you can use the tabular format as well, right? And just write the df.sample. This give you the some sample or like one sample of this data set, right? Okay, now because this is a kind of time series problem, and why we are using machine learning, because I just want to explain machine learning has some sort of disadvantage when it is like related to the time series techniques, because time series allows does not allows you to reshuffle your data. You cannot reshuffle your data. It should be like time series in a way keep previous timestamp connected with the next timestamp and so on, right? So it's a time series problem and can be easily handled by the deep learning techniques, not with the machine learning one. But I'm using this ML technique to show you the disadvantage and advantages as well, right? Since you know that because once you loaded this data, you have to perform some EDA kind of operation, right? I think you guys are already aware with the EDA technique. Yes, you know, candidates, Neha, is it? I hope everyone know that what is EDA, right? Candidates, EDA represent exploratory data analysis as a being like being a machine learning engineer and a deep learning engineer. It's not in a way कि आप बहुत ज़्यादा hurry way में just create a ML model. It's very important to understand your data set because machine learning work, a data scientist works are like a doctor kind of work. Once patient visit in a hospital, doctor should not be very rushed to just give the medicine only. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि just patient आया and doctor ने कुछ सुना भी नहीं and just simply give the medicine. It's not allowed. Doctor should be responsible to understand the patient problem in a way so that they can give the good medicine, and that is the same work of for a data scientist as well. It's not like let's just create a ML model, right? There is no sense of creating ML model if the ML model is not performing well, right? So EDA is very important tool or important technique that you need to understand. And sometimes it is like 70 to 80% of all ML work. जब तक डेटा ही अच्छा नहीं होगा तब तक एमएल पे काम करने का कोई मतलब नहीं है, राइट? एंड दैट रिप्रेजेंट एक्सप्लोरेटरी डेटा एनालिसिस. ओके, exploratory data analysis. So you need to use this concept very like proper format. So you know that I think you have already explored all this concept df dot shape. We have a very limited data right now. What we can do, you can just simply unpack this into a row and column, and you can just say df dot shape is equals to r cross c, and you can write in a triple quotes this data set contains rows. We'll get rows value by r and columns by C, right? And let me just use the format string. Okay, 40 set rows and 2 columns, right? Now df dot size, you already know that. Okay, 94 total set of elements we have. Df dot info just give you the overall info about your data, ki what kind of data rows or columns you have, like integer data, float data, and so on. Now we know that ML only see you can create your notes as well. ML only works on numerical data. So if you have a textual data, it's ML cannot understand. Machine cannot understand textual data. ML only works on numerical data. If we have any textual data, we need to convert this to numerical one. Can anyone let me know, if we have a textual data, we need to convert this to numerical data, what technique we need to use to convert textual data to numerical one? Guys, let me know very fast. Anyone? कोई बता सकता है? Share the URL of the dataset. Yeah, sorry. Let me just share the dataset URL as well. अच्छा हुआ मैंने मैसेज देखा. Where is the data? URL को मैं यहाँ से कॉपी कर लेता हूँ. Okay. You can follow the same steps. यहाँ पर आप लोग भी कर सकते हैं. Yes, I was asking कि इसको ना डायरेक्टली गूगल पे पेस्ट मत करना, because the data get automatically downloaded, right? Okay. Just paste it inside a Google Colab like this way. Okay. If you're directly pasting here, वो data download हो जाएगा. See, you can download the data as well. Okay. I was asking कि the technique of converting textual data into a numerical one. What is this technique? Anyone? Guys, you have already like explored the data analyst concept so far, EDA, so and so on. You guys should know ki what technique is this to converting textual data to numerical one. Anyone? This is an interview question. How to convert textual data to numerical one? Can anyone wants to say what technique is this? Guys, be very attentive यार. थोड़ा सा जो है like two-way communication follow करो. It's not like it's just a one way of class, right? So that technique is called a feature engineering. Okay. A feature engineering is a way where you can convert your textual data to the numerical one, right? And we have multiple techniques. I don't know ये आपका covered है कि नहीं है, but if it is not covered, definitely I'll cover the same. The one technique is called one hot on coding. Second technique is like pd.get dummies. It is completely based on one hot encoding, same similarly, right? pd.get dummies. Label encoder you can use, right? And you can use ordinal encoder as well, right? And these are the techniques that is a part of OIDI and ordinal encoder that comes under feature engineering. And feature engineering is not only converting textual data to numerical one, it is like feature selection as well. If I am saying feature and feature, a feature represents the input data set or like the X data. We know that machine learning generally divided into like the data set divided into two parts. The first one is X part and second one is Y part. The X part is called features, right? And Y part is called the target one. There is no word targets. Targets नहीं हो सकता. We can only have one target. If I'm saying one target, it's like a single column, not a multiple column, right? It can be multiple values inside a single column. एक column में multiple values हो सकते हैं, but the column should be one. Okay. And why we are using this technique feature engineering, because that is somehow related to the features part. It's not the target engineering, right? Target नहीं करना है इसमें, feature engineering features को change करना है. Since we have all numerical data, integer and float, so there is no requirement of conversion of any data type here, right? So you can just probably go. Now the third step is you need to understand whether the data set has any missing values or not. If it is, being an ML engineer, you need to convert this to like the proper data set so that missing values should be treated before implementing a model creation or anything, right? So checking missing values, right? How to check? First of all, you need to write df dot is na. Someone said ki isna. This is not isna, right? It's is na. And df dot is na dot sum. If you are getting 0 0, that represents ki there are since all values are 0, so hence no missing values found. You can write down, right? If we have a if we have missing values, now how to treat them? If we have a missing value, the first thing that we can do, we can drop, right? With management or domain knowledge person suggestions. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपका मन हुआ और आपने ड्रॉप कर दिया. वी कैन ड्रॉप व्हाट मिसिंग वैल्यूज विथ मैनेजमेंट और डोमेन नॉलेज पर्सन सजेशन. उससे पूछेंगे कि कैन वी ड्रॉप दिस वैल्यू, और बेस्ड ऑन और लाइक जो गट इंस्टिंक्ट होता है उसके बेसिस पे, इफ वी आर वेरी गुड टू गो विद द डेटा, अगर हमें आइडिया है, राइट? So we can drop those missing values. The second approach, we need to fill out those missing values, right? Fill. And if you want to fill those missing values, you can use the statistical approach. You can fill it with mean. You, you can use the median, right? You can use the mode value. You can fill with zero. You can fill with your value, right? And that is completely backed by your domain knowledge. अगर आप कोई किसी और वैल्यू से फिल कर रहे हैं, you need to be very make sure कि why you are filling these values, right? Because you have a domain knowledge, so you can fill out those values. Like, let me just take an example. If we have a healthcare data set where the patient BP is missing, suppose there is a patient like Gaurav, and Gaurav ka BP ka data is missed. Now I want to fill out those values. So based on my domain knowledge, I can say the lower side is on 72 and the upper side is on 120 or 60 by 120. Can I fill this right? Can it yes or no? Perfect. So it's like completely backed by the domain knowledge. It's not like कि आपके मन में कुछ भी आया लिख दिया, right? So you can fill mean, median, mode approach, zero approach, or like domain value जो भी required होगी based on that. Perfect. The third approach you can use, that is ignore, and it is not recommended at all. आप इसे यूज ही नहीं कर सकते. जी, इग्नोर. परफेक्ट. बिकॉज वी आर वर्किंग इन मशीन लर्निंग, सो हम एमएल के वैल्यूज पे काम करने के लिए वी कैन नॉट इग्नोर दोज मिसिंग वैल्यूज, राइट? बट इफ वी हैव अ मिसिंग वैल्यू, वी कैन यूज दिस ऑल थ्री अप्रोच. सिंस ऑल वैल्यूज आर जीरो, सो इट्स देर इज नो एनी मिसिंग वैल्यूज. लेट्स जस्ट मूव अदर पार्ट पे इसका मूव करते हैं, बिकॉज वी आर एक्सप्लोरिंग ईडीए पार्ट, so it's important to understand our data. So let's just create a chart to understand this time series part. What I'll do, I'll just use my plt dot plot, and inside this plot I'll pass my x and y, right? X part is year wala portion and y part is per capita wala part. Plt dot show. You can give the title as well, and inside a title you can just check yearly P PCI. Yearly PCI. PCI represent yearly per capita income, right? You can change the color and give the markers like this dot. Okay. So this is the data set, right? ये हमारा X data part है, ये हमारा Y data part है. Now we need to understand, before implementing ML model, it's important to understand whether the data set in a linear way, or like, is there any correlation between X and Y? If there is no correlation between X and Y, there is no sense of using like any sort of intelligence. जब कुछ फर्क ही नहीं पड़ रहा तो क्या फायदा, right? X and Y should be correlated in a way so that if there is any change in X, it can be directly affected, or it directly affected the Y value. There should be correlation. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए ना कि Y should be a function of X, right? We know that Y is equals to a linear equation, right? Y is equals to mx plus c, and we can say Y is a function of X, right? Y is directly dependent on X part. So if there is any change in X, it's directly get be like affected on Y portion as well. So वही चीज हम we are directly observing the same thing कि is it like क्या हमारा trend move हो रहा है? Is there any correlation between X and Y? So we can implement the machine learning portion. यहाँ पर part हम implement कर सकते हैं. Now this is the basic exploration part, right? So let's just create a model building, and we know that because we are just recapping all the things, so मैं थोड़ा सा fast लेके चलूंगा because in upcoming class हमें डिटेल में सारी चीजों को लेके चलना है, right? So that you can feel comfortable अभी सारी चीजें जो है उसके बेसिस पे. Now step number 4, creating ML model. And we know that if we are creating ML model, we need to divide our data in a X feature portion and versus target portion, right? So what is X? X are like multiple features, but right now we have only one column, so we'll only give the one column, right? And the data X portion should be in a data frame format. So you can use the double like square bracket approach, and you can pass your column. Your column name is year, right? X always should be in a data frame format, and Y should be in a like 1D dimensional array. Okay, so DF का हमारा per capita income. Now run this code and just simply check X का shape and Y का shape, right? And it says key 41 rows and one column and just a simple 47 values, right? So we have divided our data into two part, x part and y part, right? Now guys, you are already familiar with, I hope कि आप लोगों ने train test split पढ़ा हुआ है, right? Just confirm me this in a chat box so that I can further move on. मैं आगे इसको बता सकूं. Have you any idea like what is the use of this train test split? Anyone? Candidates? Guys, are you with me? अभी आप हैं इधर? Are you there? Pavan, Pragna, Preeti, Priya, Rakesh, Rohit, Shreyas, Spurti, Taruna, Tilak. Candidates, are you there? You're just connected. Hmm? Guys, are you with me? अभी आप हैं? Splitting the whole data into training and testing data. Tarun, good. And let me know, can we use like अभी हम यहाँ पर train test split use कर सकते हैं? Can we use this approach here? Just let me know. Yes, Shantala. Any questions? You have raised your hand. Hello. Okay. So, yeah, just let me know. Can we use train test split here? See, train test split has a one argument that is called random state, right? And random state just shuffle your data. Okay? It just shuffle your data. वो data को आगे पीछे shuffle कर देता है. The problem with this data set is like it's a time series problem, and you can just check. You know that key df dot have df dot tail. All these are part of EDA, right? So 1970 के बाद 1971 ही होना चाहिए. It should be 1971. It's not like the randomness कि 1970 के बाद let's just take a 1974, right? Although you can shuffle your data, but it's recommended कि if we have the time series kind of problem. Time series are like where the output is completely based on the previous input, right? So we are not recommended or like it's not recommended to shuffle your data. If you want to shuffle, so you can shuffle your data in a way कि एक series को follow करे वो. Why we are saying this? Because let's just take this example, right? Hello everyone, we are learning ML. This is a sequence of data. Hello is the first input, everyone second, V is third, R is fourth, learning fifth, and ML is sixth, right? If we are shuffling this data, it can be like R, V, hello, everyone. So does it make any sense? Just let me know. R, V, hello, everyone. Because we are shuffling our data, na? So it does not making any sense. Why? Because we have shuffled our data. So it's recommended if you are using the sequential approach. If we have a sequential data where sequence is very important. So it's not recommended to just randomly split the data. Like in a training portion and a testing portion. Although we can divide this data in a training and testing portion, but it should be in a sequence way. It should not be like the random state. Randomly नहीं आना चाहिए data हमारा, right? And that is the major problem with this train test split. So and because we have a very limited data, so we are right completely ignoring this part. But I'll recommend when to use this, right? So we have this data set x and y portion, right? Now we know that we need to call the model, right? And what is model? A model is nothing, a just a mathematical algo that learns from the given data set, right? Just a mathematical algo that learns from the given data set. और learn का मतलब यहाँ पर है to proper understand the pattern, right? That is the main purpose of the model, to proper understand the pattern. And what are those pattern? It's like a hidden pattern. Okay. Now we have two different ways to create a model. First approach, we can reinvent the wheel, and that reinvention is like we can create our own. mathematical function using Python, right? We can use this, right? The first approach is like आपका custom mathematical function. We can use this approach, but it is only recommended for interview kind of stuff. जब आप interview के लिए apply करेंगे, there might be some companies that gives you the task कि, okay, let's just implement this model or like create a model from scratch. No need to import any model, any modules, right? It's allowed to like build your model from scratch as well. So we can use the custom mathematical function or like numpy module to implement our model from scratch. And the second approach is like use the sklearn. And sklearn has a pre-built set of multiple models. You just need to import that model, and that model, we know that what is model, just a mathematical algo that already like has been implemented by the developer. It learns the data in a proper understanding pattern way and just implement all these functionalities, right? So what you can do, because we have already imported our module, so you can just write down this thing. Model is equals to linear regression. Linear regression is a class, model is an object, and you need to train your model based on your data set, and that part is called training part. And in a training part, what you need to do, you just need to fit your model, and inside a fit method, guys, you have to give two data portion. The first is called feature part and second is called tar- target part, right? And you can just check x is any, y is any. It means any data type, but we know that data type should be in a numerical one, right? So this is called the training part. What exactly this part performs? This try to understand the pattern, the underlying pattern, and it probably, and not probably, it actually uses the linear equation concept, and we know that y is equals to mx plus c. And what exactly this represent? It's like a equation of line where y is affected by the angle between x and y, or like the angle with respect to x axis of a y line, and that is called slope. m के basis पे मेरा y कैसे affect कर रहा है, that is called slope. x is like my feature, okay, and c is like the intercept value, and intercept is like when x is 0, what is y becomes c. जब आपका x 0 हो जाता है ना, once you put value of 0 in this equation, the mx product will become 0 and y becomes c. So it's like जहां पर x की value 0 है, what is the value of y, that is called intercept. And if you are implementing this linear regression part, the slope value and the intercept value is very important, right? We can do one thing, either we can randomly give those value, okay, give random value of m means slope and c means intercept. But the problem with this, the model is not the good one, right? So what exactly we need to understand, first we start with the random value. हम एक random value देते हैं m and c का, and we use the gradient approach. A gradient descent is an algorithm. It's like learning from the miscalculations. Gradient descent is a brain of this linear equation or like a linear regression, जहां पर it try to find out the best fit line. Gradient descent जो है वो क्या करेगा? It just try to implement a best fit line, and it can be start like this. Let me just take a screenshot of this. This is the dataset part, right? And what exactly the linear regression will try to do? It just randomly create a line, right? And the line being created by m0 and c0, okay? And it tried to increase those values, right? Like this. And whenever that model finds the good line or like the best fit line, the line can be like this one, line ye bhi ho sakta hai, it can be this one, it can be this one, it can be this one, and so on, right? But what is the best fit line? That best fit line is that one which has the least or like the minimal errors. It is like the minimum error on entire function और minimum error on entire set of lines. जितने भी लाइन ट्राई किए, जहां पर सबसे ज्यादा एरर है वो लाइन इग्नोर हो जाएंगे. एंड वेयर वी हैव अ वेरी लिमिटेड एरर, एरर तो होगा. See, machine learning models cannot be the perfect. It cannot be 100% accurate. There might be some sort of errors. So हमें वो लाइन ढूंढना है where the system has minimum error, जहाँ सबसे least error हो, and that is called the best fit line. And ये जो अभी we are just randomly moving this line, it's not like in a randomness way. इतना ज्यादा random नहीं होता. And we have that algorithm जो ये line को कहीं पर तो stop करेगा. And that algorithm is called gradient descent algorithm. I think ये आप लोगों ने पढ़ा हुआ है. It was already mentioned कि ये topic में cover हो गया. Just let me know. Candidate, are you aware with the gradient descent concept? Anyone, any idea? What is these gradient descent? And what do you understand by gradient word and the descent word? It's a combination of both two words, gradient word and a descent word. Guys, are you there? Anyone just confirm me what do you understand by the gradient descent? Candidates? Tarun, Nisarg, and rest others, Purti, Vijay. Guys, if you are not familiar with the gradient word, so it's very difficult to understand how those models like stopping their or finding their best fit line. Because a gradient is some it's like directly related with the integration portion or like a mathematical portion. A gradient is like कि हम एक line का एक slope का curve का हम gradient निकालते हैं where the equation will become zero और like the gradient जो slope है हमारा, slope is like gradient and gradient is called a derivative of y with respect to x, जहां पर slope की वैल्यू हमारी जीरो हो जाए, जहां पर इक्वेशन हमारी जीरो हो जाए सॉल्व करके डेरिवेटिव, राइट, ग्रेडियंट हमारा जीरो हो जाए, where change in y and change in x will become zero. That is called hamara gradient. It's like a finding a global minima, right? And that finding a global minima with respect to derivative is called a gradient. And gradient descent is like we have an algorithm that minimize the losses and maximize the weights and intercept. वो weights और intercept को increase करेगा to just minimize the losses. And what do you understand by losses? Losses are like the differences between the actual value and the predicted value. Okay, so if this is my if this is my actual value and this one is like my predicted value, so we have some sort of differences and that differences is called as losses. Okay, so the line should be in a way where it should have a minimum losses and that is called the that can be calculated with the help of a gradient descent algorithm, right? You know that line can be of any part, वो किसी भी type का line हो सकता है, but the best line is called where the losses are very minimal, right? And that can be done with the help of a gradient descent algorithm. I think ये आप लोगों ने पढ़ा होगा. If you are not like no idea related to this gradient descent algorithm, I'll teach you, right? वो next class में हम देख लेंगे. Let me just discuss with the management, right? So this model dot fit is like it's a training part. Once you done this, let me just write this: minimize the loss, okay, by what, by adjusting value of slope and c is like intercept and slope को हम adjust करके loss को हम minimize करेंगे. Okay, so this is called the training part and the training part is like directly implemented linear regression आपने बना लिया. Now what you will do, you will just simply check model अब हमारा next future value कैसे predict कर सकता है with the help of predict function. That predict will take the testing part of data, but since we have not converted data in a training and testing part, so model dot predict को we can simply give the x part and that is like कि अब ये सारे वैल्यूज को प्रिडिक्ट करेगा. व्हाट वाज द एक्चुअल वैल्यू, यहाँ पर जितने भी मेरे रेड डॉट्स हैं दोज आर माय एक्चुअल वैल्यू एंड जितने भी हियर यू आर seeing जितने भी ग्री पोर्शन है, all these are like the calculated values, right? Now with the help of our model we just want to predict the all values for given x कि 9080 में एक्चुअल कितना था वो तो हमें पता है, बट 9080 में what my model is saying, let me just calculate those again, and that is with the help of this predict function. This predict function predict the possible values जो जितने भी हमारे पास डेटा सेट है, and let me just write this as a y predicted value. Y predicted is like कि मॉडल हैज प्रिडिक्टेड दिस वन, राइट? नाउ व्हाट आई वांट, मैं इनके बीच का डिफरेंस चेक करना चाहूंगा. So I'll just say, let's just do one thing. You can simply plot a graph and you can just use this one, the same previous one. मैं इसी को use करता हूँ like this, and I'll again create a graph right here, and inside this I'll not use the plot, like the plot is like a linear plot, so I'll just simply use the scatter one. Scatter will take x data and y data now, and the data should be like this. ये एक मेरा इस तरीके का data set है. Perfect. And I'll plot my line, that best fit line that model has calculated, and it can be plotted with the help of my actual data. Actual is like x data, so I'll just simply use my x data and the y predicted value. Y predicted value जो अभी मॉडल ने predict करके दिया, and that y predicted is stored in a ypred format. And let me just change this color to blue. Okay, and that is my best fit line. See, in a paint I have also calculated this best fit line, but that is completely based on randomness. Okay, it is also based on randomness if we are using the train test split. But because we have not used the train test split right now, so it's not based on randomness, right? Now it is completely derived with the help of gradient descent algorithm. And what gradient descent algorithm says? It says you have to minimize the loss by adjusting the slope and intercept value, right? And that is my best fit line. So you can just label this thing as well. Label is my best fit line that been calculated with the help of ML model, and it is like my actual data points. Okay, and you can show both labels with the help of plt dot legend, right? That is best fit line and that is your actual data. Now guys, we know that there are differences between those actual data set and the predicted one, and those differences are called my losses. And losses can be derived with three different same terms. Losses can be sometimes says like it is similar to residuals as well. Okay, you can say this loss as well, and you can refer this to cost as well. Interviewer can ask, what do you understand by residuals? What do you understand by loss? And what's your take on cost value? All these are my losses, and losses can be simply represented by the predicted value and the actual value. The difference between the predicted value and the actual value is called loss. Suppose the company says कि next year we will achieve the 2 crores of sales, but in practical situation we have only achieved 1.5 crore of sale. That is called my loss. The difference between the predicted value and the actual value is my loss, right? And how to calculate this loss? We have three different matrices, and we know that MSE, MAE, and RMSE. All these able to calculate the differences, right? So why we are using this MMM approach? Those M are like mean or median or like some kind of statistics kind of concept. But the major concept is like we need to identify or we need to calculate the losses, and the losses are like prediction value, like predicted value minus actual value. Okay. Now why we are using the mean approach? Let me just give you the example before just move on. So मैं एक compare df नाम से यहाँ पर बनाता हूँ. We have already this data frame, and inside this data frame let me just create another column or add another column with the name of ypred, and इस ypred में मैंने अपने ypred को पास करा दिया. Now this is the data set. This is why 9017, it is actual value 9070 में what was like your per capita income and what exactly your model has predicted. The actual per capita income was 3399 and your model has predicted 134 in a negative trajectory or like a negative value. Why? Because that is your error. Machine learning works on a mathematical foundation, so it can be the positive value or the negative one. So this is your model accuracy, right? That shows कि model अच्छा perform नहीं कर पाया, and that is the reason you need to calculate your loss. And you know that losses can be represented with the residuals, loss और cost के basis पे, and loss are like predicted में से actual का difference, right? But actual or predicted के difference को once you calculate, you can probably get a zero value, right? The sum of all values can be 0 1, and that is the reason you are using the mean approach. Now what exactly this MSE says? MSE says, let me just start with the MAE. The first error is like mean absolute error. The full form of this mean absolute error, and it's like you are just calculating the absolute difference. Absolute is like eliminate the negative sign, just simply absolute or like give the difference. Okay, and the difference are like actual value minus predicted value, and you know that the actual value is this one and predicted value is this one. So you can just say df of actual value, your actual value is like per capita income, and subtract the predicted value, your predicted value is like y pred. Okay, once you subtract this you will get some sort of negative and positive value, right? And the MA says now once you calculated this absolute error, like आपने y actual और y predicted का difference calculate कर लिया, now just take a mean. And how to take a mean? You know that you can simply enclose this inside a bracket and can simply write a mean value. This is like we are using the foundational or a mathematical approach. Now what exactly this formula looks like? This formula look like, let me just say कि this is my actual data, this is my this one is like my actual data and this one is predicted one. So that formula says कि what you have to do, you need to first calculate the absolute difference. So let me just say कि ये जो मेरा y actual है, y actual को मैं y के नाम से लिख लेता हूँ and y predicted is like my y cap के नाम से. Okay, एंड इनके बीच का मुझे एब्सोल्यूट वैल्यू निकालना है, एब्सोल्यूट एरर निकालना है. सो लेट मी जस्ट डिफरेंस टेक अ डिफरेंस बट यूजिंग द एब्सोल्यूट और लाइक मॉड अप्रोच, जहां पर वी आर जस्ट एलिमिनेटिंग द नेगेटिव वैल्यू, राइट? बिकॉज द एरर कैन बी लाइक मल्टीपल पार्ट ऑफ एरर. यहाँ एरर वन, इसमें भी एक एरर है, इसमें वी हैव एरर्स एज वेल, here we have errors as well, right? We have multiple errors, right? So what we need to do, we need to summarize all the errors. हमें सारे errors को add करना है, like error 1, error 2, error 3, error 4. We have positive errors as well and we have negative errors as well. यहाँ पर भी हमारे पास multiple errors है. So why we are doing this is like we have just only error one, but we have multiple errors. So let's just summarize these all errors. So what you can say, you can summarize all those value by using the summation sign. Summation sign says कि जितने भी differences है सबको summarize कर दो, यहाँ पर सबको add on कर दो. But the problem is like कि negative sign हो सकता है. So let's just eliminate this using the mod approach, right? Now we know that once we are summing up all the errors, we just want to calculate मेरे system में average error कौन सा है. So I'll just say कि ये जितना भी sum up आपने कर दिया, let's just take a mean of this. And you know that how to take a mean. इस पूरे को अगर आप 1 upon n से मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे, it will give you the mean value. या तो आप ये कर सकते हैं या you can just simply divide by total value को आप n से divide भी कर सकते हैं. That is your like mean absolute error. And we know that कि we have multiple errors, जहां पर error 1 भी होगा और error n भी होगा. So you can just say जहां पर all value can be represented by I. I is like y का पहला पॉइंट, y का predicted का पहला पॉइंट. एंड यू कैन जस्ट से जहां पर I की वैल्यू, आई थिंक ये आप लोगों ने MAE में पढ़ा होगा, I की वैल्यू goes from 1 to n से लेकर के, राइट? एंड दैट इज लाइक योर मीन एब्सोल्यूट एरर. दिस विल कैलकुलेट द ओवरऑल सेंट्रल एरर टेंडेंसी कि आपका एरर कैसे मूव कर रहा है. द मोर द मीन एब्सोल्यूट एरर, the like bigger the problem with your ML model is. Okay, so it's very important to evaluate those metrics. Now we have simply uses the mathematical approach. If you don't want to use this, you can use the module approach. जहाँ पर module approach में we have already calculated imported this mean absolute error, and what it says कि मेरे को y actual और y predicted बता दो. And y actual is like y के नाम से है and y predicted is like y pred के नाम से. Once you run this, you will get the mean absolute error के basis पे. Now you can just check mean absolute error are like just checking the differences between absolute error, make it absolute and calculate the mean values as well, right? Okay, so you can just probably check here, this is my actual data predicted value and this one is like this one is like the actual data and this one is my predicted value. We need to sum up all those values and take the mean of this, right? And why is like your actual data and ypred is like your predicted data, right? And you are getting the mean absolute value error line like 3088, and it is like the more the absolute error, the bigger the problem with the ML model. So हमारा main purpose है we need to eliminate or we need to minimize those error, and that is the reason we are using the gradient approach, right? So it's like mean absolute error. Mean absolute error में you can use this formula. Since we have a mean absolute error, so we can use this instead of taking the absolute value, we can use the squared approach as well, and that is called my mean squared error. So how to calculate the mean squared error? It's like कि absolute error ना लेकर के simply squared both the values, right? Y actual value and Y predicted value. And once you run this, you will get the mean squared error, right? Why we are squaring the value instead of this one? यहाँ पर we are not taking the absolute, and instead of this absolute value, we just take the squared value, right? And squared are like कि actual और predicted के बीच का difference निकाल लो and इसका square कर दो. And we know that कि difference positive भी हो सकता है, negative भी हो सकता है, but square part will turn this to positive one, right? And we will solve all these value and we'll get the आपका mean squared error. So it's like the more you get the differences, the more square value will it be. जैसे यहाँ पर अगर इनका स्क्वायर सॉल्व लाइक डिफरेंस सॉल्व करके आए, इट्स 2, 2 का स्क्वायर विल बिकम 4, बट इनका डिफरेंस इज वेरी ह्यूज, सो द स्क्वायर विल आल्सो बी, द स्क्वायर आउटपुट विल आल्सो बी वेरी ह्यूज. दैट सेज कि जितना ज्यादा डिफरेंसेस होगा एरर उतना ज्यादा होगा. सो इट्स लाइक इट्स गिविंग द पेनल्टी ओवर द ह्यूज डिफरेंसेस कंपैरेटिवली टू द लीस्ट वन. जितना कम डिफरेंस होगा उतना कम पेनल्टी पड़ेगा, जितना ज्यादा डिफरेंस होगा उतना ज्यादा पेनल्टी पड़ेगा. So probably, like right now, ML engineers generally prefer mean squared error rather than the mean absolute error, because mean squared error gives you the better approach जहां पर हमारे पास more penalty पड़ती है ज्यादा differences पे. That is your mean squared error, and we know that all these error are like differences between the actual value and the predicted value. And what is RMSE? RMSE are like root mean squared value. So you can just use the functional approach as well, where you can give the same data y actual value and like y predicted value, and you can just print out those RMSE. or you can do one thing, आप MSE पे ही 0.5 की power आप apply कर दो like this, and this will also give you the RMSE, and here you are getting the same value. These MSE, RMSE and MAE both or all have to calculate the losses, so that losses can be minimized, okay? And all it can be done with the help of a hyper tuning, and that is a part of like आपका future में अभी हम उसे cover up करेंगे. And once we build our model, we can predict those value. Now let me just create a predict function. That predict functions take the value, and based on that values it will give the next future values, okay? So let's just check the next 5 year or like 10, let me just take next 5 year GDP, GDP or like per capita income. Okay, so you can just say next year, next year का data, and before we just calculate the next year, let me just check कि मेरा last year कौन सा है. So df dot tail, the last year is like 2016. So what I'll say कि मैं 2017 से लेकर के 2026 तक का मैं GDP PPP निकालना चाहता हूँ, like आपका जो है प्राइस कैपिटा इनकम. ओके, सो यू कैन जस्ट से रेंज 2016 टू 5 year, यानी कि 2016 प्लस 6. यू नो दैट कि जब आप इसे रेंज में पास करेंगे एंड वंस यू कन्वर्ट दिस टू लिस्ट, तो वो आपका लिस्ट में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा लाइक दिस. ओके, एंड दिस इज गोइंग टू बी योर नेक्स्ट ईयर डेटा. ये आपका लिस्ट के अंदर लिस्ट आ गया. ओके, दिस इज योर नेक्स्ट 5 year डेटा. ओके, नाउ यू कैन मेक इट मोर डायनेमिक. How much year? So you can just say 5, and instead of this hard coded 5, you can just say कि ये वाला वैल्यू एंड प्लस में 1, राइट? एंड दैट इज योर लाइक एक डायनेमिक ऑप्शन बन जाएंगे. इफ यू जस्ट से 5, it will become 5, and if you just say 10, it will automatically add the next 10 year value, right? Now we'll create a predict function. Predict GDP or per capita income, both are different, but I'm just taking example of GDP, right? It will just take data as an input, and because we have a model, that model predict the values, okay? And you just need to simply give the data, right? And that data is like your next future values, and how to use and how to like particularly print the values. So either you can use the visual approach as well, or you can just store this inside answer, and within answer you know that this answer is like आपका array के अंदर होगा. So you can just write a for loop for I in, let me just zip my data माई डेटा, और यहाँ पर जो है मैं डेटा और आंसर दोनों को मैं जिप कर लेता हूँ. दैट जिप अलाउज यू टू डेटा और इसके आंसर को बाइंड करने में हेल्प करेगा, राइट. द फर्स्ट इज डेटा एंड सेकेंड इज आंसर, एंड यू कैन जस्ट से व्हेन आई इतना होता है तो ये जे इतना आ जाता है, राइट. लेट मी जस्ट यूज दिस प्रिडिक्ट जीडीपी फंक्शन. ये आपको जिप फंक्शन अगर नहीं समझ में आया, जस्ट लेट मी नो कैंडिडेट. व्हाट इज द यूज ऑफ दिस जिप फंक्शन? आई थिंक आप लोगों ने पाइथन में पढ़ा होगा, right? And you can just give your next year data, right, like this. And now this predict GDP will predict the next value. Okay, X has 11 feature but linear regression is expecting one feature as input. Okay, now the problem is कि यहाँ पर we have X has 11 feature, we have converted this to 11. Okay, now do one thing, इसको ना हर एक square list में मुझे पास करना है. It's like 2016 it should be in square, 2017, 2018, 2019. So what I'll say, मैं इसको बोलता हूँ कि let's just run the for loop for I in this, and you have to pick each I in a list format like this. Okay, हर एक मेरा list format में आना चाहिए. Now just run this and this will give you the data like कि 2016 में इतना जीडीपी होगा, 2017 में इतना जीडीपी होगा, and you know that कि जितने भी I आ रहे हैं list format में आ रहे हैं, you can just slice out those value index के basis पे and just write it in a dynamic way. कैसे? f string का use करके you can just say year 2016. ओके, आपका जीडीपी विल बी योर वैल्यू ऑफ जे, एंड जस्ट close these quotes and run this loop again. When year is 2016, your GDP will become like this one, and you can, if you want to round off those details, so you can round these data as well, right? Like this. So in this way, candidate, you can predict the next values, right? 2016 का GDP इतना है, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and so on. Now the best part is कि you can combine both code, and let me just write out this. Now you can get the next 5 year, 10 year, 20 year, जितना भी आपको चाहिए. So if you just want to predict for next 2 years, so 2016 तो आएगा ही because 2016 is the last data. 2017 and 2018 will your next 2 year data, and you can just check it for next 5 year and next 7 year and next 10 year as well. So guys, in this way you can just simply implement your model and you can create a function. That functions will predict the next feature values. So we are already like running out of time, थोड़ा सा time spent already ज़्यादा हो गया है. So I think you guys are good to go with this. This class was just a recap class, and I hope you don't have any doubt related to this class. If you have still any doubt, you can just share me. You can just let me know right now. Candidates, I have a concern also. Like you guys just need to communicate as well. It's not like just a one way of class. I'll repeat this again, because if you're not willing to communicate, so how we can probably like understand the problems, whether it is related to doubts or any sort of problems, right? So just communicate this. Candidates, shall I just close this session? Is just candidates, are you there? Nisarg, Sneha, is there any questions? Purti, Tarun, Tashri, other candidates, guys? Okay, so I think you'll all of you will get the recordings, the summarization part as well, and let me know just in case of any issue. And what I want, this is a way if you just want to like do some changes कि sir थोड़ा सा slow लेके चलो, use bilingual as well. You can just say, or if you want कि just two way कि sir आप भी थोड़ा सा करो, हम भी साथ साथ perform करें. If you want in a this way of class, just let me know, because this is the first class. I just want to recap all the things, एंड प्रोबेबली हम नेक्स्ट इसी के बेस पे कंटिन्यू करेंगे. ओके कैंडिडेट्स, सो यू कैन शेयर योर डाउट्स विथ योर फैकल्टी कोऑर्डिनेटर्स जो भी हैं, एंड लेट मी नो. ऑफ कोर्स आई विल शेयर माय नोट्स एज वेल, राइट. सी ये जितने भी हम कोर्स पे यहाँ पर काम करेंगे ना, मैं आफ्टर द क्लास मैं अभी इसे शेयर कर देता हूँ, राइट. पब्लिक में कर दूंगा. यू कैन जस्ट, because this is in a notebook, and in the upcoming class I'll create my github repo, and based on github repo जो भी हमारी classes होंगी, you can download all the codes, वो सब आपको वहां पर मिल जाएंगे, राइट. नोट्स हो गए, जो भी समराइजेशन पार्ट है, कोड्स पार्ट एज वेल, एंड द you can share your doubts as well, right. I think we are good to go, so let's just close this session. Okay, bye bye.